So we will get into our agenda. First thing up we have today is it is report season. All of our reports are going right now. So if you, I've linked right here where you can see our timeline. And if you click the timeline link, you can see all of the reports and their due dates. The first one that I want to talk about is one that is open right now. That is the beginning of the year report. It is in single sign-on and is under the Strong Reader Survey, the beginning of the year report. I've linked the tutorial if you still haven't finished your report, where you can watch the tutorial video, how to get your plan filled out. The plan is open right now. This report is open right now for the beginning of the year report. It was actually due October 1st, but if you are one of our schools who made the switch to Amira, you have an extension till October 15th to get your beginning of the year numbers in and submitted to us. As of just about 30 minutes ago, I checked and we still have 181 school sites who have not yet submitted their beginning of the year report. We do not have that many schools who switch to Amira. So that means we have quite a few schools who are past the deadline of getting their report turned into us. So if you're one of those schools, please get on that and get that to us. I will start sending out emails very quickly for schools who have not turned this in yet. We have to have all of these reports submitted to us and approved so that we can make the calculations to determine the per pupil money for strong readers, and so that we can make those allocations to districts. So we have to have all of these submitted to us so that we can calculate those numbers and get your funds to you. So the sooner everyone gets this report finished and into us, it will help us to get money out to districts so that you can start using it to help your young readers. Before I go past to the next report, I want to just check, Melissa, are there any questions about the beginning of the year report so far?
There are not.
Okay. This one is a pretty straightforward report. It's just asking your numbers. The only thing new in it is really about the exemptions. And I think we pretty much answered most of those previously. And if you have any questions, you can still watch the tutorial to get this report into us quickly. The next report that we still have currently open is the third grade promotion report. This report is open. It is due on November 1st. If your student data is not correct, you are to contact Kyle Wang at OMES. And this is his email, and this is the service desk email, so that they can start a ticket for you to get that. So this would look like if you're having a student that's name maybe is appearing twice, when you open that report, if you're seeing a student's name twice, or maybe you're seeing a student listed on there that you know met the RSA criteria on the state test, we need to get them removed from your report. If you have a student that didn't make criteria, but they're not listed, you would need to get them added. So if any of your data is not correct, this is how you get it corrected, is to the service desk at OMES and Kyle Wang. If you have not opened this yet, even though it's not due till November 1st, if you have not at least opened yours to make sure that you are seeing the right students in your report, please do so very quickly, because we have people who have submitted these, several weeks ago, and they're getting a little backlogged at OMES. So you don't want to wait till the last minute and then be trying to get your student names and the populated names corrected when it's, a day till the deadline. We want to make sure that you open them in plenty of time to get any corrections needed done before you are due to turn in the report. Any questions on the third grade promotion report, Melissa?
I do not see any at this time.
Okay. Well, now on to the big one. The annual district reading plan and site plans are open right now. This plan is our one that had a lot of new changes in it. And so we have been getting lots of questions about this plan. The plan is open. It is due October 15th. So we still have a little bit of time left. once your site person completes a site plan, it must be confirmed by the principal. And then all the site plans, after all they're done, the district plan, you have district timeline and district funding sections that have to be completed. And then all of that has to be certified by the superintendent before it comes to us to get OSDE approval. All of these plans also have to be submitted to us and approved so that we can send out funds. I just want to talk for a few minutes about a lot of the errors that we're seeing. So when these come to us, if we see errors in them, we will notify you by email. We will have notes in the plan of things that you need to look at. And here's some of the things that I'm seeing happening the most common errors. Assessment windows being longer than 3 weeks. So if you have an assessment window that is, I'm seeing some that are 4, 5, even 6 weeks long, that is too long. If you have someone testing at the beginning of a 4-week window and someone testing at the end of a 4-week window, that comparison, that's just not a valid measure. You need them all between your windows need to be between 1 and 3 weeks long. Another problem we're seeing with assessment windows is the site assessment windows not aligning with the district windows. So your district should set a screening window, for example, your beginning of the year screening window, and maybe they're going to say we're doing it the first 3 weeks in September. And when I look at a district timeline and I see that your district is saying that you're going to do your beginning of the year testing the first 3 weeks in September, and then I open up a site plan and that site is doing their testing in August, then that's not lining up with your district window. Sometimes there'll be it's okay if maybe your district window is 3 weeks and you're going to complete yours in 2 weeks within that 3-week window. That's fine, but they have to line up. They can't be totally separate. You should be following your district timeline when making your site assessment windows. Another thing that we're seeing is in the time and personnel section of the site plan, we're seeing people leave blank the staff count. I think I've worked with the OBS and this may be corrected now where it's making you put in a number there, but I know with some of the first ones coming through, that was not a required field. And so we're seeing those left blank. Hopefully we got that situation corrected if you're just now starting your plan. This last section is the one that we've seen the most, we've received the most questions about, and then also it's been the most common reason that we've had to reject plans and send them back to you. And that's the intervention section on not addressing all of the tiers, not addressing all the intervention groups. Our intervention groups are IEP, non-IEP students, and students demonstrating the characteristics of dyslexia. Or the other reason that we're seeing is that you're not addressing all of the skill areas. So about this intervention section, Melissa is going to expand on what we're really looking for when we're checking this section. Melissa?
Okay, so before we hit that, couple of things I did want to come up with. We have several people in the chat saying they've submitted a question or a request for opening a plan or something like that, and they're still waiting on responses. So I'm just double checking to see where are we on any of those requests. If it's to OMES for Kyle, I know that OMES is very backlogged. So that's fine, but make sure that if it's been, like someone said, it's been several weeks, so please make sure that we are aware of that through our literacy inbox, through literacy@ste.ok.gov, so that we can help on that end as well. If you just submitted something like on Friday, I said somebody submitted something on Friday, it does take a few days. We do have a lot of calls that do come in. So sometimes it's not instantaneous, just so you are aware. But if it's something that you feel like it's been a few days and you have not had a chance to get something resolved or have not received an answer, please email back on that literacy page, because all of us have access to it. So if somebody's out of the office, which does happen at times, that other people can catch up on that as well.
Melissa, Melissa, I might say on that, I've been checking those and trying to open plans back up daily as I'm looking at them. And I know as of yesterday afternoon, anyone that was in the literacy box or my inbox, I had opened those back up. So if they had emailed us previous to yesterday and it's not open, they might need to send us another one because I thought I had all of those open back up.
Absolutely. And we certainly, I mean, I've had some people say, well, we didn't want to bug you or things like that. We get that, but the crux of it is sometimes things do get buried. And so it's fine to bump it up at the top. We are trying to take care of it. Every 10 minutes might be excessive, but if it's been a few days, absolutely, please reach out back to us again. Okay, looking at the intervention page on our page. So some of the things that we are needing to be aware of, and there were massive changes on this section, and this has always been the section of the reading plan that does tend to create the most problems as we're trying to make sure that districts are communicating what's being used for intervention so that we're not evaluating whether it's a great idea or not. What we're evaluating is this going to meet the letter of the law so that we are still within that compliance. So what we do know is that we need to have an idea of how we address the needs of students in these different areas of reading for different levels of intensity. This doesn't mean that we're having to address every single possible student in a classroom because we might have multiple things going on. But if I'm thinking about my kindergarten students who are struggling with phonemic awareness, those are probably going to be at a tier 2 because they're in kindergarten. They're not way, way low. They're usually still struggling with that phonemic awareness. They're within a year of where their peers are. And what am I going to do for those students that need that? Oh, well, I have this curricular resource. I have this instructional strategy that is evidence-based that we're going to do for that. That is the intervention resource that we're using for those students. I might have an outlier that's somewhere else. Maybe instead of going to the reading coach, this one little guy is going to the special ed teacher. Perfectly fine. It's what are you doing for most of these students? What's your standard protocol for when a student is showing up as having difficulty in an area? What will you do first? And what will the resource be? So when we're looking at these skill areas, we really should be seeing all 5 of those areas being addressed or having a plan for them. A couple of exceptions might be if your school only serves K or K1, it might make sense to only have that plan for phonemic awareness and phonics, maybe fluency, and not hitting the vocabulary and comprehension quite as hard. It's always, if you have that plan, please keep that plan because you're always going to have some students that are in those outliers, and it prevents you from having to have an individual conversation about every single student every time. But when we're looking at K through 3, our 2nd and 3rd graders are not all struggling with phonemic awareness and phonics. We do know sometimes the issue is they have the skills down, but they're needing to work for fluency, or they are really good at reading the words, but they do not understand what they're reading. So they might need to work on that vocabulary or comprehension. When we're talking about the intervention resource, we're not talking about the setting. So special ed, working with the reading teacher in a small group, those are all settings. Those are places where things happen. But the magical glitter in those places no longer exists. So we actually have to do something in those places to make sure that those kids are learning. And so what are we going to do, regardless of whether it's with the interventionist, with the special ed teacher, with the classroom teacher? What's happening in that setting to make sure that we are getting to where we need to be? So it might be something like I'm using the phonemic awareness routines from the Florida Center for Reading Research. One of the things that we've noticed, and we're working on this, we're really not calling schools about this one right now, is we're really getting to where our schools are noticing that they're identifying publishers. So for example, Really Great Reading is a publisher. This publisher produces multiple resources to support students. So when we see really great reading, we know that that's generally a reliable publisher, but we are wondering, and this is something we're working towards, but maybe we're not quite there yet as a state, identifying what is the resource within that publisher to help that student. Same thing with 95% Group or STAR. Those types of things all have some different resources within. Things that are red flags for us might be teacher created materials. Not talking about the material, I'm talking about a teacher going and creating materials. We are by law required to make sure that we have evidence-based resources. And so a teacher just creating things, while this may be an extremely well-versed, knowledgeable teacher, we have no way of evaluating that to make sure that we are within compliance. Another concern that we often see is teachers pay teachers. Again, there may be some great resources there, but we are not able to go through and evaluate and make sure that this is keeping you within the bounds of compliance that we're required to do. So I think that was really one of the biggest. The other is there is a new column you'll notice about the intervention group, whether this is a resource being used for students on an IEP, not on an IEP, or students at risk for characteristics of dyslexia. That's a new requirement that we are now required to report to the legislature as which of these resources are being used for each of those 3 subgroups, which is why we've asked that to be on there. So we're trying to prevent a whole new report for you. But making sure that we are looking as, do you have a way, if you're only serving non-IEP students, what are you doing for students that are on an IEP that are struggling with those reading skills? And so that might be a reason we would call as well. What else on there, Deanne, did we want to address?
I think you've addressed it all.
Okay. A couple of questions that I am noticing about Amira that I do want to address real quick while we have this. So Amira did reach out, for those of you that have switched over. They're psychometricians. It's inconvenient for us, but it's actually a good thing in the long run. They have asked their psychometricians to really look carefully at the data that our schools are pulling in to make sure that it is where we would expect it to be, that there's nothing wrong. And they did notice that there was an issue with the kindergarten scoring, not with anything that what kindergartners were doing, what we were doing in our schools. It was something with their scoring mechanism. They started to explain it to me, and I'm a little too technical for me. So what they are doing, they identified about 32 districts where this affected. They did notify each of you. So I'm sure those of you that are in the chat were one of those 32 districts. And notice that was massively under identifying kindergartners that were at that risk for characteristics of dyslexia when compared to national norms and previous state norms. So they did make that adjustment, and it did adjust your kindergartners as far as where they were scoring. So what we need from you is, if you've noticed that change, just to please send us that email either to Deanne, to me, or to that literacy inbox. Literacy inbox is always the best option in case one of us is out, so that we can open your report. Especially if it's already been certified, it's very easy for us just to click that reject button. It can be adjusted, and then you can recertify it, and we can get that adjusted. We know that when things happen, like for example, this, or you're waiting on the 3rd grade promotion retention report for those things to be adjusted, those are things beyond your control. We're well aware of that. We would never penalize a district for making their best effort and for things that are beyond their control. So that's one of the reasons we ask you to let us know. So if we notice that it's past the deadline, and it's still not been done, and we see that we've been in communication about that, there is no way that we're going to we're holding that district harmless for that. So please don't panic. It's what always been our practice here under RSA, now with Strong Readers. That continues to be our practice. We are here to support you as a school and to make sure that you have everything that you need. And sometimes those things are things that we have to wait on, and we are aware and trying just to help you with that. Okay, so I know while I've been talking that there's been a lot of questions coming up there. Couple of things. I do know that we can address Spanish versions for family guides and for a lot of other things. We have checked into that. We do not currently have anyone available to provide those translations. I continue to ask about that because I know that's something that we do ask about, but I have been told pretty firmly that that is not something that we have done in the past, nor will we do at this point in time. The other question about the literacy grant. So the Comprehensive Literacy State Development Grant, CLSD grant, which was formerly Striving Readers, that many of you have heard about, that $60 million federal grant we're very excited about. There will be sub-grants to districts available. Those are not supposed to go out until, I believe, mid-November. So we're still kind of in the process of laying that groundwork. And I'm sure any of you that have ever worked with the grant knows that once it's awarded, there's a whole lot of groundwork that has to be laid to begin with, and then we can start moving forward. So we will make sure that we're letting you know, and hopefully we'll have some news on our next call about how those can be applied for or what the status is. But those won't even be in existence probably until about the middle of next month. So it's okay. No one's missing anything. We're going to make sure that you know everything about it so no one misses out. Okay, Dean, I'm going to turn this back over to you and I will see what I can do with our chat.
Okay. I noticed a question in the chat about the intervention, since Melissa was talking about the intervention section. And there was a question of, is there a list of approved intervention resources for tier 2 and tier 3? We do not have a list of approved intervention materials. Districts are free to make that choice locally. We did just wrap up an RFI for intervention materials, and we will be, we just sent the letters out to vendors very recently, and we will be working on getting that list posted to our website, but it is not necessarily an approved list. You are still free to use whatever intervention materials you want, but it will be a list of just guidance towards some interventions that we have looked at, and we will have it listed by what skill they specifically focus on. So you can be looking for that to be posted soon, but it is not a limited list. It is not a list that you have to choose from. I'm going to go back to sharing the agenda so that we can move on with our discussions. So we just finished talking about the district plan. And just keep in mind that that due date is very quickly approaching. It is due October 15th. If you have corrections that need made, we will email and let you know. And then we'll open the plan back up for you to go in and make your corrections. And then once they're submitted to us, we will check them again. So moving forward, let's talk about parent-teacher conferences. Most of you will be having parent-teacher conferences coming up very quickly. So some things that you may need to address during your parent-teacher conference is this SLIP, or the Student Literacy Intervention Plan, if that falls within your 30 days. Some of you may have already had to have these conversations with parents if you tested earlier in the year. But if you didn't, and this is falling in your 30-day timeline, make sure that you are having those conversations with parents and getting the signatures that you need on your intervention plans. You would also need to be sharing your screener results from the universal screener as well as from the dyslexia screener. And when you're having these conversations, here's some things that you can use with parents. I have linked here our family guide for strong readers, and this is just an overall guide of things that parents might need to know regarding the requirements and regarding screening and interventions for their students. I have also linked the family information and resources for dyslexia document that we have that you can use with your conversations with parents. And then if you have not sent out your notice of proficiencies yet, and you plan on doing that at parent-teacher conference, I've also linked the form for our notice of proficiency letter for parents. And then the last thing that I have linked for that is our implementation guide. And specifically the reason I linked that for parent-teacher conference is this is a very lengthy guide. If you go to the the implementation guide. It is pretty lengthy, but if you go to page 25, starting on page 25, and for several pages after that, it specifically has strategies to use at home for parents. And it is organized by skills. So if you were having conversations with a parent of a student who needs help in phonics, this is something you could go to. Maybe just print out the pages that particularly relate to phonics and strategies that the parents could use at home to work on phonics with their readers. It's same thing with any of the other skill levels. If you're working on vocabulary, comprehension, fluency, phonemic awareness, you can go to this and maybe just print those certain pages off for parents, or you could give them the link to this where they can look at, but you would not want to print the whole guidance, the whole implementation guide. It is very lengthy, but you could go and find maybe certain pages that apply for parents. And this could be something that you could hand out or to use for discussions with your parents.
Deanne, could you also address the professional development portion of the reading plan?
Okay, go back and talk about the reading plan. So in the professional development plan, if you are a school who receives more than $2,500 of Strong Readers funds, you are required to spend 10% of your funds on professional development that is from one of our approved vendors for professional development that is Science of Reading Aligned. So we have a, if you go to the Strong Readers web page and then go to the professional development tab on the side, there's blue tabs, and there's some that say literacy professional development. And we have an Airtable that has all of the vendors that we have and their plans that or their professional development that has been approved for you to spend 10% of your money on. Your 10% would include what you pay for registration. It could include if you have to pay substitutes to take the place of teachers as they're attending those trainings. It can also be including stipends if teachers are required to complete some of this training outside of their outside of their contract hours, then districts can provide a stipend to those teachers, and that stipend can also count in your 10% requirement. So you would have your district plan would talk about how you're going to use the 10% funds across the district and what professional development might be provided district. And then when you go to site, you're going to say particularly what your site is using for professional development. So that might look a little different at each site, and your district plan is going to be an overview of what's going to be in the district. And then at your site level plan, you're going to talk about what professional development will be provided at that site. Okay, let's go on to statewide screener, Amira. Melissa already talked about this a little bit, but we do have the statewide screener, Amira, that is provided to districts at no cost now. We are still taking signups. This is the sign up link where it says districts can sign up. If you are one of our schools who switched to that, we are giving you the extension on your BOY report. It is extended to October 18th for you. And we are still going to allow districts even to sign up at mid-year. And we will have some more information coming about that later when we'll be pushing for some mid-year and letting schools enroll in Amira. We have one training left for our October webinar. That is the data dive training, where you can learn to interpret your data. You're going to talk about some of the reports that you can use and how the best ways of communicating your results to families. We've had some of those already, and today is our last one, is today at 3:30 to 4:30, and this is the link where you can go on and sign up for that training. There will be recordings made of all these trainings, and we will post one of those on our website later, so that if you're not able to make one of our live trainings, you could watch the recording later when you have a chance. November, we are going to have some more webinars and even some in-person ones in Tulsa and Oklahoma City, and that will be data analysis for school leaders. The links and dates for that will be posted soon on our Strong Readers Amira site. We don't have those available yet, but when we do, we will post those to our webpage. I went ahead and left the Strong Readers. If you're still just needing general information about the switch over to Strong Readers from RSA, I went ahead and linked the recording from my webinar that I did around back to school time, where we just went over all of the changes in the new legislation. And this is my slide deck from those presentations. And this is a link to our website with Strong Readers for Schools, where you can find all of the updated guidance, all the updated forms, and anything Strong Readers related you should be able to find on that page. So I'm going to stop sharing and go back and see if we have any other questions that need addressed.
One of the questions that's coming up is, what about letters? So some people are asking about if letters would be available. We are able to offer cohort 5 of letters. One of the questions was about if this was early childhood. So this is actually for all teachers. It's 3rd edition, what we've offered in the past. It's appropriate for grades K and above. It really emphasizes those elementary grades, although we do have several middle and high school teachers, especially interventionist special ed teachers working with students that have reading difficulties, taking that. We're perfectly happy to have anybody involved that would need to be. Yes, we have sessions that would be available morning, afternoon, evening, and Saturday mornings. So we're getting that question quite a bit because we know subs are very difficult to find. Yes, there is still a stipend. It's $600 for completion. I'm well aware that $600 is not nearly enough to cover the amount of work that is involved. But it is what we were able to do with what we had at the time. We do know a lot of districts are also offering a stipend on top of that for their teachers that are also participating. And that is a perfectly reasonable use for Strong Readers funds, and also meets that required 10% that Deanne did mention earlier. So we are getting the schedules for that posted soon. This will be a little bit different than what we've done previously, where we assign somebody a group and you would do change requests. Alexia has started using a new program called SWOGO. Odd name, but it's a nifty little program. It's going to list all of the options. There will be about 40 options for each session, and you will go in and select the option that works best for you, so that you can build your own schedule as you go. The other thing that we are also making sure of is that we've had a few people that said they really wanted to be able to do this, but they wanted to do it at a more accelerated rate. They had that kind of time, whether they were a coach or they just felt they needed it right now. They were willing to devote some extra time to do this more quickly. So we have some of those volume 2 sessions that will be available later in the spring for those that do want to do that at a quicker rate to be able to get that. They just felt that it was being too drawn out for them. So you will be able to set that up for how it works best for you. We will be doing a webinar with Lexia on October 21st. We will be putting this link on our literacy professional development page so that you can find that, as well as all of the information about letters. So let's see, I'm just kind of trying to read over that. The other question that's being asked is, when would we know if we need to make corrections to our plans? You know, we'd love to be able to give you a date of exactly when we're going to get to your school. But we have, 917 schools that Deanne and I are basically reading. So we've gotten through about 70 so far, and it does take us a little bit of time. So thank you for your patience with that, and we will work through them as quickly as we possibly can. We are recording this meeting. We will make sure that we have the recording, as somebody has asked, up by tomorrow at the latest. It just depends on how quickly we can get somebody to approve, and we can get everything downloaded and through all the washes that we have to get done. Can subs be paid for letters out of strong readers? Yep, sure can. Have fun with that. We can do, and it doesn't have to be, just K through 3, because that can apply for any of those there. So hopefully that answers your question, Faith. I saw you nodding. So, what else? Deanne, have you had a chance to look over those?
I've been looking and I think we've answered the ones that I've seen. Um.
Okay. The Amera Data Dive recording. Yes, thank you, Amy. I will make sure that that is up. We had the last session today, and so then we'll be able to get that recording up afterwards so that it will be available. We usually put the recordings up after the sessions are done. So we'll have that Data Dive recording up posted today after that session. It might be tomorrow morning before our webmaster is able to hit that, make that link to go live.
I did see a couple questions asking about on the intervention section. If we would return things, if it just said really great reading, or if it just said 95% group instead of listing the specific program. Melissa, I think you kind of answered no on that. My kind of answer has been no. If that's the only problem with your plan, I'm not sending it back to you for that. But if I'm already sending it back to you for something else in that section or something else on your plan, then I'm also might put a comment about that, like which 95% group program are you using? But if that's the only issue with your plan, I'm probably not sending it back to you just for that. But if I'm asking you other questions, I might also ask that as well.
Okay.
Another thing that on the intervention plan is if we see another reason we might send back on the intervention plan is if the times don't look appropriate for the skill level. So if I'm seeing a tier 2, that your tier 2 students are getting 30 minutes a day, but your tier 3 students are only getting 15 minutes a day, then that's not appropriate. And that would be something that would be asking you questions about. That if we're seeing that, you know, tier 2 is getting more time than tier 3 is, then that would be something we would be looking at. It's just things like that on that intervention plan that have been making it difficult. But mainly the thing is, the main thing I'm seeing on that is if it's not all the skills are not all addressed and the tiers are not addressed, or the intervention groups. Like I had a couple who put in like on their intervention groups, they put in tier 2 and tier 3, but they had non-IEP students on all of them. So it wasn't showing that any of their IEP students were being addressed. And I'm sure you're addressing your IEP students, but you need to enter a row for that. So maybe your IEP students might not be going to the reading specialist with the other students, but maybe they're getting their intervention in a special ed room, or they might be getting it with the reading specialist. We just need to see them represented in that. We would need to know what your plan would be to address interventions at each level for each group of kiddos. So I think we've addressed everything. And as always, if you have any other questions, you can always send an email to the literacy inbox so that we can get back with you. And we look forward to getting all these plans in and getting them read and approved so that we can distribute the money to you so that you can use it to help our young readers in Oklahoma. So thank you all and have a great day.